A Herculean comeback attempt fell just short against the Houston Cougars, ending Gonzaga's decade-long streak of making the Sweet 16.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, folks, and welcome into Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Randy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy, folks. Head to 5 Hour Energy to find over 15 flavors to choose from. And if you need one now, you can grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. Stock up today to stay energized. Well, we're talking about Gonzaga's heartbreaking, incredibly difficult to watch loss to the Houston Cougars in the round of 32 on Saturday evening. For those of you joining the live, welcome. Appreciate it. For those of you joining the show later, whether on YouTube or in your audio platforms, I appreciate you for being here with another Gonzaga basketball season, whether this is your first episode, 10th episode, 50th episode, whatever it may be. I appreciate all of you for being here. But unfortunate to have to see this season come to a close before the second weekend. It felt like this was a year where this may end up happening just because we knew Gonzaga wasn't going to get a top 5 seed with the way that their resume shook out and the way that they took so many close losses early in the year. And one of the kind of talking points for this game was, hey, they have a chance to win. They're capable of winning this game, but I didn't expect them to get blown out. And they never really looked like they were going to get blown out. But until the very end of this game, they also never really looked like they were going to win. And then they finally pulled together enough stops at the right time, hit some key shots, and got this thing within a single possession. They went on a 9-0 run to make it 77-74 in the closing seconds. This game was between, it felt like 7 points. Gonzaga would get it to about 7, and then Houston would get it up to about 12. And honestly, it felt like the game was between 7 and 12 points in favor of Houston pretty much from the beginning. Gonzaga went down 10-2 in the opening first 4 minutes of this game, and it was between basically 7 and 12 points right until the very end. Gonzaga started doing a little bit more of that half-court trap. Michael Ajayi came in, put some pressure on Houston's guards. They go on this 9-0 run. They make it 77-74. Gonzaga very nearly gets a turnover on a bad pass. It bounces off Ike's hands as he deflects it away, goes out of bounds. Houston gets the ball. LJ Cryer makes the free throws. Gonzaga has a chance late in this game. Caleb Battle has an opportunity to tie it. Houston jumped the play, knocked the ball loose. Battle still managed to get it, but he ended up running into the corner right where Ryan Nembhard was. There was 2 Zags, 3 Houston players. Battle kind of tried to throw the ball up. It ended up getting deflected away, knocked out of his hands. Houston recovers. Gonzaga fouls, and that was the end of the game. Really devastating way for this game to end, and kind of a microcosm of the season. Unfortunately for Gonzaga, they did not win close games this year. And this was different in the sense that a lot of the time Gonzaga was winning close games or was in close games, kind of games that were closer in terms of the score throughout the contest. And then they ended up, either bungling it down the stretch or just don't close it out. In this game, Gonzaga actually played well right up until the final seconds. Like that's what made this so frustrating, is it wasn't just a result of, Gonzaga didn't execute down the stretch. They did. They went on their 9-0 run. They made their switches. They brought in some different life, some energy with Ajayi coming in, and Asante played great. And they got stops. They hit their shots. They made all their free throws. Like the things that Gonzaga needed to do to close out this game and pull off an improbable comeback, they did every single one of them until the literal closing seconds when they didn't get a good shot up right at the end. And I know that feels somewhat similar to like UCLA or UConn or some of those other games, but it really did feel like Gonzaga executed down the stretch until they didn't. And it's close as only, what is it? It's only matters in horseshoes and hand grenades, right? Like it doesn't matter. You still didn't win the basketball game. You're still not going to the Sweet 16. Your streak of 9 straight years ends at 9. Houston gets their 6th straight, I think, appearance in the Sweet 16. But it was tough for it to go that way. It was tough to see Gonzaga do so many things right in the final seconds of this game and still not pull it off. So as we do on the show here, we do the good and the bad. We didn't have our 5 keys to victory because our last episode was a crossover episode. So in the second segment, we'll talk about the seniors, the players we know who are leaving the program. We'll celebrate them. And then we'll talk a little bit about next year's roster, but just very little, because we have literally 4 months worth of podcasts coming out after this where we're going to talk about next year's roster. So we don't need to do it all right now. And then we're going to close out the show talking about the women's team, who they got a game on Sunday afternoon in the Women's Basketball Invitational Tournament. The Zags shot the ball well from three in this game, and it didn't seem like that was going to be a part of the good. In fact, in my notes, it's been part of the bad until about halfway through the second half, where I was like, well, this is actually something they're doing well in this game. They started 3 of 12. I think they started 0 of 7, actually, and then they were 3 of 12, and they ended up finishing this game with 9 of 20 from three, made 6 of their last 8 3-pointers, 45% from three. This was a good three-point shooting game for Gonzaga. That was something they did well in a game where they really needed to do it well, and it was part of the reason they managed to get back into this contest in the second half. Unfortunately, at one point, both teams had combined to make 10 consecutive threes, and we'll talk about that in the not-so-good thing. Houston shot the absolute crap out of the basketball in this game. Typically happens when Gonzaga loses an NCAA tournament game. And the Zags were also a perfect 15 of 15 from the free throw line. Literally did not miss a free throw in this game. Graham was great. Battle hit a couple. It was excellent to see this team not give away points at the free throw line against the kind of opponent where you just cannot give away points, and Gonzaga did that well in this game. Got to shout out Graham Ike. What a game for him. He had 4 points in the first half, finished this game with 27 points. He was 8 of 13 shooting. He was 2 of 3 from three. He was 9 of 9 from the free throw line. I have no idea if this is the last time we'll see Graham Ike in a Gonzaga uniform. He has the ability to come back. I don't know if he's going to or not, but this was an extraordinary performance from Graham Ike. 8 of 13, like I said. He made 2 threes in the first 4 minutes of the second half. Houston was daring him to shoot. He said, fine, I'll knock him down. He made all his free throws. He was masterful in this game. I cannot say enough good things about what Graham Ike did in this game. The only reason Gonzaga was even remotely in this contest was because of Graham Ike. I thought the Zags did a lot of good things defensively. Not great, not enough. Houston's a very good team, but they forced a lot of tough shots. LJ Cryer had a phenomenal game, but so many of the shots that he hit were tough, contested mid-range jumpers. He's coming off flare screens, and Gonzaga was able to fight through the screen and get a hand up, and he's just hitting these like 17-foot jumpers off the dribble. And it's like, well, you take that shot. If you're Gonzaga, you're game planning against Houston. If you're told, hey, the shot that they're going to take is late in the clock, the 17-footer, LJ Cryer is going to be moving to his right, and he's just going to throw it up. It's like, yeah, you take that. But he knocked him down. But especially late in the game, I mentioned Ajayi coming in, putting pressure, using that trap defense at half court. That they executed a lot of those things late in this game really well. And while it wasn't a perfect defensive performance, and certainly Houston's three-point shooting and overall effectiveness, especially by Roberts in the second half, don't point to a great performance. I think from an eye test, this version of Gonzaga's defense still light years better than what we saw against Oregon State or what we saw against Santa Clara, what we saw even in like the first Pepperdine game against Gonzaga. Like this team improved so much on that end of the floor, and they ran into a buzzsaw in Houston here, but I think they still deserve some credit for their defense. And Emmanuel Innocente deserves a little bit of special love as well. He played pretty much the entire second half. He had 3 points. He had an open three, had 3 boards, 2 assists, and a steal. Again, he's never going to jump off the page in the stat sheet, but really nice stuff from him. And got to mention Ryan Nembhard closing out his career with a double-double, 10 points, 11 assists. He had a pair of steals. He was 3 of 5 from the field. He did have 5 turnovers, but against Houston, some of them were kind of sloppy late in the game, and the announcers correctly noted that he's defending LJ Cryer. Like, he's drawing one of the toughest assignments defensively. He's a little fatigued, and it showed at times late in this game. It's not an excuse for him necessarily, just more of an indictment of like how difficult what he was asked to do in this game was, and he still managed to produce a very solid stat line. The not so good stuff for Gonzaga, again, spurts of good defense, but Houston shot 8 of 16 from three, 50% from beyond the arc, and LJ Cryer just killed him. He had 30 points. He was 8 of 15 from the field. He was 6 of 11 from three. He was perfect 8 of 8 from the free throw line. He was masterful in this game. A lot of it was Gonzaga's defensive lapses. A lot of it was good defense, and he just knocked down open shots. The fouls obviously were an issue in this game for Gonzaga at times as well. The Zags also had challenges defensively, particularly in the first about 6 or 7 minutes of the second half against Juwan Roberts. He finished with 18 points on 18 field goal attempts. That's extremely rare for him, but Kelvin Sampson was right in the hot hand. He was getting work. Graham Ike was not playing very good defense on him. I think he was worried about picking up fouls, but he kind of let him. Graham played really tough and physical on offense, but he didn't play tough and physical on defense, and that hurt Gonzaga in a significant way. And not just the defense, but the rebounding. The actual rebounding numbers were close. Gonzaga got out-rebounded by 6, which is not good, but it's not terrible. But the problem is Gonzaga got absolutely smoked on the offensive glass. Houston had 13 offensive rebounds in this game, many of them down the stretch at critically bad times for Gonzaga to give up offensive rebounds. Sure, some of them were long rebounds that are just unlucky, but some of them were just getting straight out physicaled, out hustled, outworked for offensive glass. We knew Houston was going to do this, and Gonzaga still wasn't able to keep them from getting those second chance opportunities, which ended up being far more than the difference in this game. If Gonzaga had been better in that area and limited them to more one and done opportunities, Gonzaga also only got 5 offensive rebounds. So they did not give themselves second chance opportunities. Houston got way too many of them. That more than makes up the difference in this game. We mentioned the turnovers, had some early, had some late. Wasn't like a huge issue. They ended up with 11, which is above their average, but it's not a horrible amount. But they were at really bad times. 2 on the first 2 possessions of the game, and then quite a few of them late in the game. Just felt like the turnovers came at bad times. And then got to end the segment here talking Nolan Hickman. He barely played in this game. I think he played 5 minutes in the second half until he came in the final 10 seconds just to potentially bomb a 3 if Gonzaga needed it. Mark Few just rolled with the lineup that he had in the second half that was working really well. It featured Emmanuel Innocente and Caleb Battle and Ryan Nembhard and EK and Huff, and he just rolled with that for basically the entire second half. Ben Gregg was in foul trouble. Ajayi came in the last 90 seconds to play defense. But outside of that, that was the lineup that they rolled with. And Hickman, I feel for the kid because it's his final game. But Debbie Antonelli, I thought, said it really well on the broadcast where she said, he's a catch and shoot guy, and this isn't a catch and shoot game. I know that sounds overly simplistic, but it's kind of true. Hickman's value in this game just wasn't really there in terms of what he's best at and how Houston was defending this team. And he's not a bad defensive player, but Innocente is better. Battle's bigger and stronger. Nembhard is not a great defender, but they needed him to be on the floor because of his playmaking skills. So Hickman was kind of just the odd man out. And unfortunately, as a senior, it ends up being his final game in a Gonzaga uniform, coming off such a great performance against Georgia. It sucks to see for him, but wasn't a game for him necessarily. He didn't get benched because he missed his 2 3-point attempts, but it was unfortunate that he didn't really get a chance to shine in this game. Well, folks, we're going to have full off-season review episodes coming up over the next couple of weeks here on Locked On Zags. But for today, we're just going to talk about the departing seniors. We're going to talk about how Ryan Nembhard's incredible season finished up, where he is on the all-time single-season assist record books. All of that coming up here in just a second. First, folks, the Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers, they are on an MVP level. And with the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear, wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room for up to 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. So take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and we're kind of having our first segment of the off-season for Locked On Zags here as we recap the team's loss to Houston in the round of 32, ending the program's streak of making the Sweet 16 after 9 straight seasons. They made it in 2016 on that team with Domantas Sabonis and Eric McClellan when they upset 3-seeded Utah in the second round, made it to the Sweet 16. That was the start of this streak. 2 national championship appearances between now and then, some other Elite 8 appearances, some incredible performances, but unfortunately it comes to an end on Saturday night in Wichita after a loss to Houston. So like I said, we'll do season review episodes for each player on Gonzaga's roster over the next couple of weeks, but want to highlight the 4 players that we know for sure, unquestionably, barring we shouldn't say anything surprising with the NCAA and the way that their rules are enforced or not enforced these days, but barring some kind of surprise, these 4 players are out of eligibility and they will finish their Gonzaga basketball and college basketball playing careers this year. We'll start with Ryan Nembhard, the transfer from Creighton, the younger brother of Andrew Nembhard, who was a 2-year player at Florida before transferring to Gonzaga and starting for the Bulldogs for 2 seasons before going to the NBA and now being a very solid player for the Indiana Pacers. Ryan, 2 years at Creighton, And then 2 years at Gonzaga, he hit the transfer portal before last season. Everybody thought he was going to Arizona to hang out with Tommy Lloyd. He ends up coming to Gonzaga, starting at point guard for the last 2 years. In the first half of his first season, he was good, but he wasn't great. It took him a while to kind of find that role, to get his relationship with Graham Ike and the rest of the team going. And then in the second half of that year, he averaged like 9.5 assists. And this year coming in, it was kind of like, man, could he do that for a full season? I'm not sure anybody thought that he would, but he did. He finished the year averaging 9.8 assists per game. More importantly, he finished the year with 344 assists. He came into this game at 333, finished the game with 11 assists and 10 points. So 344 assists. In the history, the recorded history of assists in college basketball, Ryan Nembhard has the 5th most assists ever. Ryan Nembhard has the 2nd most assists in a single season since 1990. Folks, that's the year that I was born. He is more assists than the only player since 1990 to have more assists in a single season was Kendall Marshall for that 2011-2012 North Carolina Tar Heels team. He had 351. Nembhard 7 assists away from tying that record. He was 5th all-time again behind Mark Wade, who had 406 at UNLV. Avery Johnson, 399 at Southern. Anthony Manuel and Kendall Marshall are the 2 others ahead of him. Just a tremendous season from Ryan. He's not the scorer that, some of the other guards like Braden Smith and Cam Jones and Donovan Dent and guys like that are, but he is the best passer in college basketball, one of the best passers in the history of college basketball. And I'm very sad that the Nembhard lineage will end for Gonzaga. Both of these guys were so much fun to watch, easy to root for. I'm really sad that Ryan wasn't able to will this team into the Sweet 16. He gave it a heck of an effort. But unfortunately, this is where his season and his assist record will lie going forward for Gonzaga. Next up is Nolan Hickman. Nolan Hickman, tremendous 4-year player for Gonzaga. And I know he's one of the most polarizing players in program history. Him and Josh Perkins are, if somebody's got an opinion about Nolan Hickman, I bet their opinion of Josh Perkins is probably the same because those guys just seem to really drag out the strong opinions from people. And Nolan was a guy who began his career as a backup point guard, became a starting point guard, wasn't fit for that role. He wasn't fit for that role. And I think anybody, even people who are supporters of Nolan Hickman, who are not haters the way that there's a segment of this fan base that is, I think everybody could admit Nolan was not a point guard. And then he shifted again when Ryan came in, shifted to an off-ball role. This year he was one of the best three-point shooters in the entire country. He was like 45.5%, something like that. Was a tremendous three-point shooter for this team in the catch-and-shoot role, as we mentioned earlier. Doesn't do a ton else. He's a better defender than he gets credit for. But in this, and it's unfortunate that not only does his career end, it's always unfortunate when these guys' careers are over. It's just a sad moment. That's what makes one shining moment hit so hard at the end of the tournament. But it sucks that he goes out on a sour note. Obviously, I'm glad Gonzaga beat Georgia, but I kind of wish that Nolan had been able to have that kind of game in his final game because he was awesome in the game against Georgia. That was one of the best games he's ever played in a Gonzaga basketball uniform. So he almost went out on the highest note, but unfortunately kind of crashes down with the 0-point performance where he doesn't really play much in the second half. But I think Nolan Hickman's a guy that will probably get sort of swept away in the annals of Gonzaga basketball history over time. But which is unfortunate because I think he was a better player. He was also just beloved. He was dancing with the crowd all the time. He was incredibly charitable, has a Give Back Foundation in Seattle that has been charitable since he was in high school, kind of before he even got to Gonzaga. And an all-time great kid and a great Zag who I think just kind of got caught in this. His role changed a little bit and he sort of materialized into a scapegoat for fans that I think was a little undeserving. Ben Gregg also out of eligibility. He is done from his Gonzaga career. He started with that 2020-21 team that went to the national championship. He was basically a high school senior on that team because the COVID year wiped out the high school year. So he graduated early from Clackamas High School, came to Spokane, spent the second half of that year on the bench for the Zags and was on the bench while they went to that national championship game, evolved into a much bigger player over time for his time in Spokane with the Zags. And this year he stepped into a starting role. He stepped into a starting role at the second half of last year. This year, Ajayi started the season. Eventually, Ben stepped into that role. And then eventually, Braden took over that role very last couple of games. But Gregg's three-point shooting was bad the first half of the year. But in the second half of the year, he shot 37% from three, which is exactly what he shot each of the last 2 years. So unfortunately, the bad first half of the year kind of significantly derailed his three-point shooting in a way that makes it look like he had the super off year when really he had the super off half of a year. He was a tenacious offensive rebounder, super high energy guy. Loved the way that he played, kind of a supercharged glue guy type player for Gonzaga. I will very much miss watching him in a Gonzaga uniform. And then last but not least, although the player who spent the least amount of time in Spokane, is Caleb Battle. Caleb Battle, sixth-year player, started his career at Butler, was there for 1 year, spent 3 years at Temple, injury-riddled years, I should add, spent 1 year at Arkansas, and then came to Gonzaga for his sixth and final season of college basketball eligibility. The consistency was never really there with Caleb Battle, but when he was on, he was one of the most fun players to ever watch in this uniform. His athletic ability, his ability to finish around the rim, to get to the free throw line, his going on a heater for him was just an otherworldly experience. Gonzaga's had players who can just get absolutely scorching hot. They've had players take over games, but they don't have a ton of guards who had the ability to bend a defense and just completely dominate the way that Caleb Battle did. I go back to the quote before the season where Mark Few said that they've never had a player like Caleb Battle. I think about that quote so often because I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing. And at times it feels like it's both. And I'm curious if Mark Few would go after a player like that again, because I don't know if they ever figured out how to use him. And Battle's inconsistency should not be blamed solely on the coaching staff by any stretch. A lot of it is on Caleb Battle, and that's fair and that's fine. And I think he would tell you that. But I wish we'd gotten to see a more consistent version of Caleb Battle, because the glimpses we got of his greatness made it well worth it and made it a very fun experience, but also a frustrating one. And there's probably no better example than how this game ended, where he was great. He was the reason Gonzaga was in this game in so many ways. He had clutch shots toward the end of the game. I thought he worked hard defensively. He grabbed some big time rebounds. They ran a play to get him a look for three, and it wasn't entirely his fault. The handoff was a little sloppy. He dropped it, but at the end of the day, he didn't get a shot off when he needed to. And unfortunately, if you didn't turn it off in a rage right as the end of the game, like I'm sure many of you did, you would have seen the Battle, tears in his eyes, just holding his uniform over his head. Kelvin Sampson, the Houston head coach, came over and kind of consoled him, gave him a hug, told him out, some nice things. Kelvin Sampson seems like the biggest Gonzaga fan in the entire world. He corrected a reporter who didn't pronounce the word Gonzaga the right way in a pregame interview. If you didn't see that, it's fantastic. There's an article I wrote about it. You can find the link in the show notes. But he also just, even in his postgame press conference, was incredibly complimentary of Mark Few, talked about how much he reveres him and how much he respects him. And it was really nice to hear that. But it was hard to watch Caleb Battle with tears in his eyes. It's not his fault, that play didn't materialize, but I'm sure he's putting that blame on himself. And I feel for the kid. It's no fun to see anybody's career end the way that it did. There are obviously other potential departures, players who could enter the transfer portal. Curious about Graham Ike, Michael Ajayi. Ike has another year of eligibility. Ajayi in December gained an extra year of eligibility because the junior college rules changed, which meant that his 2 years spent at a junior college temporarily don't count against him. They just said anybody who is a senior who's expected to graduate this year, who some of their eligibility was from the junior college level, those players now have an extra year of eligibility. That's the extent of the ruling at this point. I have no idea if Michael Ajayi is going to plan to use that extra year at Gonzaga, if he's going to transfer, if he's not going to use it at all. I have no idea. But he's somebody that's kind of on that fringe right now of the roster. Like, what does this look like for next year? Same with Graham Ike, same with Steele Ventures in terms of whether he can get healthy. Obviously, anybody else could enter the transfer portal, but right now the roster is fairly in flux with those 4 players departing at minimum, potentially others as well. And again, we're going to talk so much about this. We're going to have weeks, months of episodes talking about Gonzaga's roster, what lineups they're going to use, what players they need to fill, who they need to add in the portal, what kind of, things of that nature. They're all going to come up. But for right now, I wanted to get a focus on these 4 guys. And again, we'll have individual episodes for each of them in the coming weeks. But tough to see those guys who are all in various ways a big part of this Gonzaga basketball program. Tough to see their careers come to an end, just short of where they wanted to be. I mean, they wanted to be in a championship, but short of being in the Sweet 16 where they all hoped they would get for a 10th straight year. Well, folks, the Zag women, they're going to play Colorado on Sunday in the second round of the WBIT. We're going to discuss that matchup. We're also going to talk about St. Mary's taking on Alabama on Sunday as well. All of that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, daylight saving times, it snuck up on me again. And if you're feeling like you're kind of still missing that lost hour of sleep, then 5 Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Or if you're staying up late watching the NCAA tournament, like I know every one of you here live is doing, maybe you're squeezing in an extra round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. I've been staying up past midnight this entire month. Right now, as I'm recording this live, I'm 6 hours away from waking up to get on a flight to go to Dallas, Texas for the Bracket Breakdown Amazon show. So I am definitely needing these 5-hour energies. It's the jolt to help keep me going into the next day, whether I'm at the game or out in Dallas or just traveling. 5-hour energy is easy to grab and it keeps me feeling refreshed. So head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. And you can even build your own 12 or 24 pack delivered right to your door. And if you need one now, grab a 5-hour energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're literally everywhere. So stock up today and stay energized. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and we are closing out the show, talking about where we're at with the women's basketball team in the WBIT, the Women's Basketball Invitational Tournament, as of course, at least 48's team unfortunately did not make the NCAA tournament after a semifinal loss to Oregon State in the West Coast Conference Tournament. And then we're going to close out the show talking about St. Mary's, their matchup, see if they can get in the Sweet 16. I know it would be some people's absolute nightmare, some people's dream. They want to see the WCC succeed, obviously, with Gonzaga about to move to the Pac-12. Maybe that's not a conference affiliation. Maybe it doesn't matter as much. Maybe we're all rooting against the Gales. We'll see, but we're going to talk about that to close out the show. But first, the Lady Zags are playing Colorado on Sunday, noon Pacific time. The reason they're playing Colorado is because they won their first round game against UT San Antonio, the Roadrunners. Gonzaga wins this one 67-51. The way it works in these non-NCAA tournaments is that you typically just play at the home court. So if for the higher seeded team. So I think Gonzaga was a 4-5 matchup. Gonzaga was the 4 seed. UTSA was the 5 seed. Therefore, Gonzaga hosted the first game, which meant that Yvonne Ejim, the superstar that she is, we thought she was done. We thought her home career was over. We thought her college basketball career was over. She got one more home game to play in the we knew that was it because Gonzaga wasn't. I mean, I guess unless, and at this point, it's all the top seeds advanced. I guess it's possible they could have had another home game, but they're not going to. And in Yvonne's final game in the McCarthy Athletic Center, she absolutely went to work. 24 points, 16 rebounds, 7 steals. She was 10 of 15 from the field. She was 4 of 5 from the free throw line. Just a ridiculous performance from a player who has had so many of these types of performances in her career, dominated from start to finish. If you haven't watched the highlight, just check out if there's a whole highlight video of Yvonne highlights from this game, check it out. But if not, just watch the one play at the end of the half. She got a steal, got out in transition, did an up and under move to finish with the left hand. The ball was out of her hands about a quarter second before the shot or the game clock went off for halftime. It was just beautiful, beautiful basketball. Allie Turner, freshman, also a great game, 13 points, 4 boards, 4 assists for her. She was 3 of 7 from 3, which means she finished that game with 97 made three-pointers. That is a program record, not a program record for a freshman, a program record, period. Allie Turner is the best single-season three-point shooter in Gonzaga women's basketball history, and she did it in her freshman year. Very, very good stuff from her. So now Gonzaga gets the 1 seed in this region, the Colorado Buffaloes. Again, Sunday, 12 p.m. It'll be on ESPN Plus for those of you who are itching to still watch some Gonzaga basketball after the men's team loses to Houston. They're also going to face an old friend, Taylor Carr, who is a 2-year starter for Gonzaga women's basketball. She started her career at Kansas State and then spent the last 2 years of her career at Gonzaga from 2011 to 2013. She's an assistant coach at Colorado. She's been named one of the kind of young, up-and-coming rising stars in the coaching industry. She's got experience at Oregon. She has experience at I think, Oklahoma State, and now she's been at Colorado for a couple of years. She was a tremendous player at Gonzaga as well. She led the conference and three-point percentage at just under 44% in her senior year. So kind of fun to get that matchup. Colorado gets here by beating Southeast Louisiana in their first game. 73-41 was the final score in that one. They shot 37% from 3, but had 19 turnovers. And that's a pretty good summary of Colorado women's basketball because you look at their stats, they went 21-12 on the year. They went 9-9 in the Big 12. They're a good shooting team, shoot about 36% from 3, so that tracks with how they did in that game. And they also average about 18 turnovers per game. So for Gonzaga, limit their three-point shooting, capitalize on the turnovers. You do those things, you advance, you get a chance to compete in the semifinals and potentially a chance to win a WBIT. I know it's not what they want. But if you're gonna miss the NCAA tournament, go out and win every other game you have an opportunity to win, and that's what at least the 48's team is trying to do right here. Well, folks, close out the show here quickly. We'll talk St. Mary's, the 7-seeded Gales taking on the 2-seeded Alabama. This game is on Sunday at 3:10 Pacific time. If you want to hate watch, love watch, casually watch, whatever, 3:10 Pacific time on Sunday. It'll be on TNT. The Gales had a major comeback in order to be in this game. They were down 29-22 at halftime against Vanderbilt, kind of down in the 8 to 10 point range most of the game against Vandy, struggled mightily to shoot. They were 2 of 17 from 3 at one point, and then they stormed back, had a comeback. Defense really shut down Vanderbilt, took the first lead of the game, I think, with about 7 minutes to go, and then ended up leading for the rest of the game and won this basketball game against Vanderbilt. Jordan Ross had 15, Marcelonis had 14, Mitchell Saxon and Paulus Morauskas each had 12-point double-doubles. They only had 2 bench points. Mikey Lewis, 0 of 7, 0 of 5 from 3, didn't contribute much for the Gales. They'll need him and a lot more if they want to beat this Alabama team. They should have had a matchup against them last year. This was St. Mary's was a 5 seed. Alabama was a 4 seed. Alabama won their first round game, but St. Mary's lost to Grand Canyon, the 12 seed, so they didn't get to face off against them. I'm really interested in this game. Alabama plays at a super fast pace. They love to get up and down the floor. They space the floor. They shoot a bunch of threes. St. Mary's, obviously, as we know, they love to slow you down. Their three-point defense is great. It's a battle of 2 very different styles. It's kind of similar to Gonzaga Houston in some ways, obviously flipped in the sense that the higher seeded team, the favorite, was the slow team for Gonzaga in Houston and is the fast-paced team for Alabama. But I'm very interested to see if Randy Bennett and the Gales, what they have up their sleeve to potentially knock off an SEC power and advance to the Sweet 16. So we're going to see how that game goes. But folks, that is going to wrap it up for me today and for the season here. Of course, Locked On Zags not going anywhere. We're still going to be 5 days a week. We're going to take Monday off because I'm going to be in Dallas. This is kind of the bonus show for the week, but we'll have 4 shows next week. We'll have 5 shows going forward until the off season, which is not until August. So you got a whole lot of Zags content coming your way in the off season. We'll talk roster movement. We'll talk transfer portal. We'll talk Zags in the NBA. We'll talk upcoming NBA draft if any Zags could potentially put themselves in that conversation. We got all sorts of fun stuff coming your way here. So hit that subscribe button on YouTube if you have not done so yet. That way you'll get notified for every new episode so you can hang with us going forward for the rest of the off season as we get underway here on the podcast. But thanks again, folks. Thanks again to those of you, whether you were a longtime listener, a daily listener throughout the season, whether you found the show this year and are now a daily listener, welcome. Glad to have you here. Maybe this is your first show, in which case, still very happy to have you. Hope you stick with us during the offseason. We talk about Gonzaga's roster as it goes through some significant changes in the offseason. Like I said, that's going to wrap it up. As always, unfortunately for today, we're still going to say it because we always do, go Zags.